In this humility crash course, you're going to learn exactly how to destroy your own ego through accepting your own failure and admitting your own stupidity. This is going to be a very, very hard course, crash course, if you will, to do, because you will physically feel the pain and anguish of your ego trying to tell you to stop doing these. But this is vital for your own friendship and just an overall better social life. So that is why it's vital to follow each stage as thoroughly as possible. I recommend taking notes, but you don't really have to. Without further ado, let's get right into stage 1. I was a dumbass. I would give advice to my friends impulsively without actually having factual proof or, how do you say it, expertise. Like having any expertise in that subject or any factual proof, I would jump impulsively to help my friends with it because, oh, I'm doing a very selfless thing. I'm helping them. No, that's just your ego, and let me explain why you might have been in a situation like this. You see, your sense of importance might come from being the quote-unquote therapist of the group. If you were kind of like me, I used to call myself therapist of the group. Which is quite silly, really, because I'm not an expert in that. I just impulsively gave advice because my ego wanted me to be important. I suppose it's a sense of superiority for my friends, that I'm the superior one with more knowledge and better mental health, so I had the right to give them tips of stuff that I didn't know. It was just my ego telling me that it was a selfless thing to do because I was somewhat superior to them. You've probably not thought as deep as this. You probably stopped at the selfless part because your ego kind of stops you from being aware of these scenarios. That's why in stage 1, you're going to be doing a visualization exercise with me. Very simple, you just have to close your eyes. So let's get right into it. Okay. Alright, so let's begin with the visualization exercise. So simply just close your eyes. Okay, simply close your eyes. Close your eyes. And we're simply going to think of times where we impulsively gave tips or without any factual proof or the expertise. And you may want to pause this video and then do it. The more the merrier, because what we're trying to build here is awareness, which is the first step in killing the ego, is actually being aware of its existence, like being aware of the ego's existence and knowing when it comes up. So I'm just going to do it right now. I recommend you pause the video. Okay. Okay. So you might have found 2, maybe you haven't, maybe you found 0 yet, but I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to give you some examples that might help you visualize ego more, because for the people that really struggled on this exercise, that means the ego has really gotten to your head. Or you don't have an ego, which is actually fantastic, but probably you do if you're watching this video. So I'm going to give you some examples of when I did this in my life. And hopefully it rings a bell and then you'll start to be aware of it, because it's quite subtle, it's quite evil. Hence the name of the book, Ego is the Enemy. Alright, so scenario 1, my friend was revising for his maths exam. And this was actually quite a shared ego moment between me and this other guy. Now this other guy was fantastic at maths. He's somewhat of a prodigy in it. Like, he's just incredibly smart, and he's very young. He's one of our good friends as well. And we both kind of subtly battle each other to give him advice. And I just remember what really struck my core was my friend who was wanting the advice just called us out for it. Like, you were attention seeking for doing it. And it didn't strike my core that I was offended. I was slightly offended at the start, very much. But then I kind of later realized, right, what is he saying? It's true. Like, me and this guy here, this guy that's fantastic at maths, why am I competing with him? He's clearly the expert. Why do I need to jump in and help my friend when there's literally an expert giving him advice? And you know full well that your friend is probably going to learn more from the expert than you, but because of your selflessness or your ego, you just jump in and help him. And that's one of the examples I have, and one of the worst examples I have from my life. And I called myself the therapist of the friend group. And I literally in order to feed my ego, I would tell people, right, tell me your problems with the intention that I was going to fix them or solve them out of an issue. And they're going to be like, oh, wow, you're so good. You're so good. See, right? It's that crave of appreciation from How to Win Friends and Influence People. But I called myself the therapist of the group. I mean, fine, I gave fairly decent advice, but it was never expert, or I never had any factual proof of it. And there were 100 people that were better at giving the same advice than I was, yet I was still giving the advice. With this belief that I was being selfless, with this belief that I will help them, when most likely you're actually limiting your friend's capability of getting genuine good advice. You're actually hurting your friend. And you expect your friendship to improve when you're letting your ego manipulate you into being selfless. Repeat the exercise as much as you want. The more the merrier. I always like to say the more the merrier with this kind of exercises, because the more you're aware of when your ego hits you or is like takes control of you or manipulates you, that's the first stage. Give yourself a pat on the back, but not too early. Don't get too excited, because the ego has been a habit we've been building for 10 years. 10 years, if you're 16, probably 13 years since you were able to talk. It's not really inherited, but it's more human nature. It's more human nature psychologically. Like, now I'm just kind of realizing that I don't actually have the factual proof of that. That's more of like a bro science. So I'm gonna stop myself right there. But if you want to do the research, then go ahead, tell me in the comments below what that's about. And now that we have awareness, you're going to move on to stage 2. And this is exactly what stage 2 is. Now, congratulations. You're now aware. Whoa, it's kind of that mind-blowing moment where you just know that you're aware now. But how do we get rid of it? Now, this is the difficult part of the video. This is the practical part of the video. It may seem exciting as it's the practical part of the video, but in fact, it's actually going to be one of the most difficult ones. And that's accepting your failures and admitting your stupidity, especially admitting your stupidity. What you are going to do is 2 things. 1, if you are maybe in a debate or you're talking with a person and he proves you wrong, you have to immediately say, I was wrong. Now, you won't believe how difficult that is, especially if you haven't done this kind of training, because I like to consider this a skill. Humility is a skill, and it requires leveling up. The first practical thing you're going to do is admit that you're wrong more often. If you already do that, then you're somewhat at a higher level of humility than other people, and yeah, congratulations, but just do it more now. Your ego will tell you things like, oh, but you know, technically I'm correct because of this tiny fraction of information is just slightly in my way, even though the ball is in his court. About a quarter of it is in my court, so what's the point of saying I'm wrong? I'm technically right. No. I don't care if you're 40% right, 50% right, you might even be more right than the guy. But what we're practicing isn't to prove ourselves right. We're practicing to admit that we're wrong. We're developing a skill. Of course, you could be right, but if you are right, if you're right about 90%, for example, then fine. But even if you're right, maybe even more right than the guy, if you're even more right than the other person, you still have to do the hard work and admit that you're wrong. And you know how hard that is until you start, like, the reason why it's difficult is because of the physical feeling of doing it, the physical pain. Like, I'm not talking about just emotional pain, I'm talking about physical pain. Similar to cringe. If you've ever watched a cringy video and you get that, like, stomach contraction feeling or that butterflies feeling, that's somewhat what it feels like, but that's not going to be the most accurate description unless you go out and say, sorry, I was wrong, I apologize. I forgot to say it, but also say, I apologize. 1, this doesn't make you weak. This common belief that this is going to make you weak and you're not going to be important anymore. You are going to be important. It's just your ego. You hear your ego. Now you probably hear it. You're not going to be important unless you prove everyone that you're the correct one and that they should all listen to your advice because you're obviously the expert. Obviously, you have the factual proof because you probably hear it in your head right now. That is the ego, and that's adding more and more awareness to it. And then when you do the practical, I recommend I recommend doing? Pausing this video, getting up, and literally practicing this. It can be hard, but you don't have to. But what I recommend is using the practical advice I give in my future videos and my old videos so that you really improve yourself. And that's what self-improvement is about. But the second thing to do, welcome to the third stage. Wow, you've practiced. Now you've probably said that I'm wrong. You've been starting to tell people, and you've started to feel scared about your physical feeling, but then you're kind of shocked because people behave nicely about it. They're like, oh, okay. And it feels better. Well, here in the third stage, we're going to do a lot more. Now in the third stage, we're going to suggest a person that's better than us to give advice to our friend. Suggest this. A person comes to you for health advice or for exercise advice. Of course, you could tell him, right, push-ups will increase chest size and all this. But what you're going to practice doing is referring to someone who knows more about exercise than you. Because one, you're not the expert. That's just your ego wanting to be selfless and to kind of make itself feel important. And two, your friendships are 100% going to improve because you're genuinely helping your friend that way. Rather than thinking about yourself, you are thinking about your friend or friends. You're genuinely thinking in goodwill for your friend. You're genuinely giving him advice by not giving him advice. It's quite strange. I like that. You're giving him advice without actually giving him advice. You're improving the guy. You're helping him. Guy or girl. But you're literally helping him by doing this. So you can probably see now what the ego does. The ego is actually the most selfish of us. It's the selfish. It wants us to feel important. We want to be admired. We want to be appreciated. That's all the ego. And this course, and the reason you clicked on it, was to kill the ego. And if you're ever getting doubts about this, don't, because you are doing the right thing here. Like, this will level you up on so many levels. The last stage, keep practicing. It's how we level up skills. It's how, funny enough, I'm probably gonna be quite egotistical here, but if there's a skill such as solving a Rubik's Cube or playing a guitar, that comes with practice. And to get faster or to get better at playing the instrument or whatever, that takes practice. Now you have to think of humility as a skill that just needs practicing, and it's going to be hard at first. You, like, for example, with the guitar, your fingers will probably not want to go all shreddy, if you know what I mean. They'll probably want to go slow. They'll mess up because of how uncoordinated they are. Useless fingers. But that's similar to humility. First, you will feel very awkward, maybe a little cringed out because there's all this like love built up around I'm wrong, I apologize. But now, just if you close your eyes and visualize this, you've been doing this for maybe a month now, or 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, like long extended period of time, and just see how easy and almost unconscious it becomes. And now you're unconsciously having better connections with people, and making better friends, and improving your social life. I hope the best for you with that. Now, if you've watched this video all the way to the end and read all the stages, I'd like to congratulate you. You're probably going to be the few people that didn't click off the video and that are genuinely going to improve. I have full confidence that you are going to succeed in your social life. Now, I'm probably a suggested tab of videos from my recent uploads will pop up, and I'd like to say thank you for watching the crash course, and let me know down in the comments below if you want any other specific course, and I will be happy to review, research, and therefore provide you with some nice researched and expert level, probably not expert level, but with some factual evidence this time. Send this to a friend that may need this. A friend that won't constantly shut up. Anyway, see ya.